installing the management group. In this video, we're going to take a look at installing the first management server, installing the Operations Manager console, and installing the Operations Manager web console. During the installation of the first management server, both the operational database and the data warehouse database are created. You'll also specify the name of the new management group and supply the credentials for the Management Server Action account, the System Center Configuration Service account, the System Center Data Access Service accounts, along with the Data Reader and the Data Writer account. In previous videos, I've discussed the prerequisites, so in this demonstration, I will show you how to install the very first management group and the first management server. Let's begin with the installation of the first management server and place the database on a separate server. I've stored a copy of the installation files locally, so I'm just going to click Setup, and that's going to open up the splash screen. From the splash screen, I can click Install. Now this gives me the option to install the management server, the operations console, the web server, or the reporting server. I'm going to choose to install the management server, and I'll come back and run separate videos to install the operations console and the web console. So I'll click Next. It's going to select the default location of Program Files, Microsoft System Center 2016 Operations Manager. I'm going to accept the defaults, but you can change this location. So I'll click Next. It's going to verify my environment and make sure that all the prerequisites have passed. So that's what you want. Now, in the event that any prerequisites fail, you'll have to go back and make sure that those prerequisites are met and then run setup again. So I'll click Next. And I'm going to specify the installation options. So I'm going to create the first management server and a new management group. Now, if this was the second time that I had run this in my particular infrastructure, I'll have the option to add a management server to an existing management group. I'll show you that later on. Setup will create a new Operations Manager management group, the operational database, and the data warehouse database. And then it'll install the management server. Now, after you create this management group, it's very important to know that you cannot change its name, and also the name is case sensitive. So if you refer to the name during a script, you have to refer to it using the proper case. I've chosen a name for my management group. Now I can click Next and proceed. Under the license term, this is where you will read and agree to the license term. You can scroll all the way down to read that. Click I've read and understood and agree to the license term. Click Next. And now this is where you will configure the operational database. I've typed in the name of my server and I hit Tab. So you would also put in the server name and the instance name if you have a named instance. So once I hit Tab, if it can communicate with this database, then I'll be able to proceed. Once the database server has been found, the data file folder location and the log file folder location will all be pre-populated. Now, in a production environment, you would change this to something other than the system drive, but for this demo purposes, I'll just leave the defaults. Also, the name of the database will be called Operations Manager with the database size, initial size of 1,000 megs or a gig, and the SQL port 1433. So click Next. And this is where you will configure your data warehouse database. So the same thing, you would put in the name of the server that's going to host the data warehouse database. Since this is the first time this wizard is running, it's going to create a new data warehouse database named Operations Manager DW. You'll have the opportunity to change that if you wish to. So once the data warehouse database has been discovered, server has been discovered, you can click Next. And this is where you can actually go in and configure the service accounts that I mentioned earlier. Your Management Server Action account or the MS Action account, the System Center Configuration Service and System Center Data Access account, the Data Reader account, and the Data Writer account. And I mentioned before whether these accounts should be domain accounts and the permission states for all of those accounts. I mentioned that in some earlier videos. So I'm just going to type in the name of the accounts that I've already pre-created and then click Next. Once I've supplied all of the domain, username, account information along with the password, I would just click Next. The next screen you will get is the Diagnostic and Usage Data Privacy screen. And so if you use Operations Manager Console to connect to the Ops Manager Management Server that's sending diagnostic and usage data to Microsoft, the Operations Manager Console will also send this data. So you can just click Next to accept the default. Now this is the default, but as an administrator, you can turn this feature off by going into the Settings workspace in the Ops Manager console. This replaces that customer experience improvement that you had in previous versions of Operations Manager. If you're connected to the internet, you'll get the Microsoft Update page. This offers security updates and other updates. I'm not connected to the internet, so I'm going to select off, but it's recommended to use the Microsoft Updates to check for updates in a production environment. And then you click Next. It gives you a summary, and during the summary, you can actually review any of the features that you've enabled. If you're satisfied with the features, you can click Install. If you're not satisfied with them, you would have to go back, hit the previous button, and make changes. So I'm going to click Install. When you click Install, you'll see the installation progress, and this usually takes anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes, depending upon the type of processor that you have in your particular server. I'm going to pause this video and then return when it gets to the finished screen. Once the installation has completed, you'll get a Setup is Complete screen where you can go in and review the installation results. You can repair or add features by just restarting setup. I got a warning, and I got a warning on the management server only because I'm using the evaluation version, and it was successfully installed. I would have to run the PowerShell commandlet of set SCOM license to go in and enter my product key. Once you're satisfied with the results, you can just click Close and click Install again to run the next setup of the next component. Although you can install the Operations Console when installing a management server, you might also need to install just the Operations Console on a member server or a workstation computer. After installing the console, a Connect to Server page is displayed in which you specify the computer name of the management server that was installed. In this demonstration, you'll learn how to install the System Center 2016 Operations Manager console. When you pop in the DVD, you can click on the Setup, just double-click Setup. The splash screen will open, and then click Install. When you click Install, you can select which features you wish to install. So I am going to install the Operations Console. Click Next. The default location for the installation files, C:\program files, Microsoft System Center 2016 Operations Manager. You can change this location if you wish to. I'll accept the defaults. Click Next. It's going to verify my environment, make sure that I have all my prerequisites for IIS installed properly, which I do. So I'll click Next. I am going to agree to the end user license agreement. Click Next. The Diagnostics and Usage Data screen will come up. Once again, this replaces the Customer Experience Improvement Program. In previous versions of Operations Manager, basically, if Operations Manager sends diagnostics information to Microsoft, the Operations Console will also send this data. Click Next. On the Microsoft Updates, it's recommended that you select On, but in this test environment, I'll just click Off. Do not check for updates. Click Next. The installation summary. If you're satisfied with the summary, you can click Install. Otherwise, you can click Previous and go back and make changes. So I'll click Install. And now the installation is going to proceed. This process usually takes about a couple of minutes. It's not very long. Once the setup has completed, You can go back and review the installation results. You can repair or add features just by running setup again. And also you have the option to start the operations console when the wizard closes, or you can launch Microsoft Update when the wizard closes. I'll clear this checkbox and click Close. Now to test whether the console installed properly, here's the operations console. I'll click on it. And as you see, you're going to get prompt to connect to the server, so I'll have to put in the name of the management server. Once I've typed in the name of the management server, I can click Connect. And now it's attempting to connect to the management server for the first time. And now I have successfully connected to the management server and opened up the console. The web console can be installed on an existing management server or it can be installed separately. You cannot add the management server feature to a computer that already hosts a web console. Now, when installing the web console, the application diagnostics and application advisor consoles are also installed. Now, these consoles cannot be installed separately. And during the installation of the web console, you specify the computer name of the management server that the web console will use to connect to. In this demonstration, you will learn how to install the System Center 2016 Operations Manager Web Console. If I double-click Setup, it's going to open up my splash screen. I'll click Install. Now, I already have a component. I have the Operations console on this server, so I'll select Add a Feature. If I did not have a component, I would just get the Select Feature screen, where I can select any of these 4 features. I'm going to select the web console and click Next. It's verifying my environment, so all the prerequisites passed, so I'll click Next. And this is where I'll specify the management server. So I'll enter the name of the management server that's going to be used for the web console and the reporting feature. The management server that I specify is going to handle all the data associated with the management servers or the management group. Once I type in the name of the management server, I'll click Next. Next, the wizard will ask you to specify the website for use with the web console. I'm just going to accept the default of the default website. And also the reporting component has not been installed, so until I install the reporting component, the application advisor component will not work correctly. Also, if I wish to enable SSL, I can select this checkbox. So I'll select Next. The authentication mode, I will select the appropriate authentication mode to use with the web console. Use mixed mode for forms-based authentication is the default selection. As you see in the description, the mixed mode authentication is used for intranet scenarios, so the user will have to provide username and password, or the current user credentials will be passed on to the console when it opens up. If I select Use Network Authentication, that's for extranet scenarios, and the user would have to provide a username and password to access the web console. So I'll select Next. Again, the diagnostics and usage data screen, so I'll select Next. You can go back in and turn that off in settings. So I'll select Off for updates for this environment, but you would select On. Click Next. It gives me a summary, and then I would select the Install. And it will install the web console. Once the web console has completed, you see that the web console and the final configurations, along with the initial configurations, all receive the green checkbox. I'll click Close. To launch the web console, I would just open up a browser and type in HTTP or HTTPS : the server name / operations manager, or I can use the Start menu and just select the web console. This concludes our video on installing the management group installing the web console and installing the operations console. Our next video will be installing additional management servers.